What's up, people? It's Friday night. You know what that means. The Skeptical Health Bar is open once again. We got our drinks. It's the weekend. We're going to have some fun. I'm excited about tonight. I don't know about you guys, but I totally am.
I'm excited.
Donna's excited too. And Donna's here tonight.
Yay!
Yay! Donna's back. Oh, I'm so happy because that takes so much pressure off of me, especially when we have a guest, which we do tonight, and questions come up, and I don't want to miss the questions. So it's really good that Donna's here. Oh, all right. So let me go over the rules because we do have rules. Without rules, there's chaos. So we have to have rules. Rule number 1 is you are welcome to ask questions. Questions? I haven't even really started drinking yet. But you're welcome to ask questions. And tonight, you can ask questions of our guest, which I encourage. But like always, we're going to save questions for the second hour. I'm going to have the conversation with them in the first hour. We're going to get to know them. We're going to have discussions, maybe a debate or two. I don't know, maybe. But questions will be in the second half of the show. Rule number 2 is that I don't know everything, and neither does my guest. But we're okay with that. That might be an answer you get, so be prepared. But if it's something we can look up quick, we might do it, because this is a learning show. Rule number 3 is that we follow the Patrick Swayze rule. Be nice. So you can be in the chat room. You are welcome to discuss, debate, disagree, agree. If you want, that's fine. But don't call each other names. Don't get nasty. Don't be a dick. That's basically the rule there. Because if you are, yes, John, you can start drinking. So if you get out of line, Divine Donna over here will boot your ass. She's got the power. And she's not afraid to use it. Rule number 4 is that if you have a question tonight for our guest, or maybe for me, I don't know, but you probably ask me a lot of questions. If you have a question, please do us a favor and put a Q in front of that. And that way it's easier for Donna to pick them out and save them for later. And then rule number 5 is my favorite, is to drink up. A little bit of rum. That's nice.
I got Monster tonight.
You got him. Donna's got a Monster. She got to wake up. We got a conference tomorrow. Oh.
Yeah, wake up to fall asleep.
So I'm going to get rid of this frame, and I'm going to put my special guest frame up and bring on my guest, Richard Estep. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Kenny, how are you?
I'm doing great. It is nice to finally get you on the show.
Yeah.
We met once. We met once in Gettysburg.
That's right, we did.
Yes, and that was really nice. It was really cool talking to you. You are much taller than I expected, because when you were behind your booth and I introduced myself and you're like, oh, cool, and you got up and I was like, oh my God, he's tall. He's a big guy. But how you doing?
Good, man, good. Yeah, I remember Gettysburg. Well known for that clash of differing ideologies, of course.
Yes.
By which I mean the believers and you.
That's good.
That was funny.
You know what? You know what's nice? Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, which is the conference that we met at, and we're going this year too.
Yeah.
And Para Unity, which we're going to tomorrow. One of the few conferences that let me set up, and I do appreciate that, even though I have pretty much the opposing viewpoint of everyone else that's there. It's nice that they let me set up and they let me bring my information and my little testing devices that I have, and they just let me go. And I think I'm totally taking half the credit for that, because I try not to be a dick. You know, I try to be nice to everyone and have a conversation. So
He does try.
You read the sign in the background right there?
I can't see it. What's it say?
Don't be a Richard.
Don't be a Richard. Oh, that's great.
You know what? I saw that in the picture you posted where you organized your books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I love that. That's nice.
I need that reminder every so often, as I think we all do.
Yeah, I agree. Do you ever get into a situation where you start to catch yourself becoming a Richard?
Yeah. I think it's anyone that's ever known me will tell you that there are definitely times that I've been a ready, aim, fire kind of individual. I'm sorry, ready, fire, aim. My apologies. I wish that I had thought twice and spoken once instead of the opposite way around.
Right.
You catch me tired, you catch me cranky, and like a lot of people, I can be a Richard, and I don't like it about myself, and I'm working on it. Is the best I can say.
I agree. Sorry, I got ice cream.
It's hard sometimes because I've seen the people that Kenny deals with. So sometimes you really need self-control at points to
right.
Keep your calm.
There was a one instance that I relate once in a while is we were at a UFO conference and they had let me set up, and it was really cool. It was in Pennsylvania here, and at one point I have a dowsing rod tester, and it pretty much it locks the dowsing rods, doesn't let you move them at all. Mm-hmm. So any movement from the rods would hypothetically come from something else. So I had it set up on the table, and a woman showed up who was told that I had this there, and she was the president of some kind of dowsing society. And she was extremely pissed off from the start. Didn't even talk to me, just came around and started screaming at me. And when I say screaming, I'm not exaggerating. She was literally screaming at me about how dare I do this, that I'm saying it's fake, and that I'm mocking her, and this and that. And that situation, it was very hard to keep my calm. You know, all of a sudden I'm getting attacked, and I'm like, all right, breathe. Finally, I got to talk to her, and I said, here, go play with it. Show me it works, because I'd like to be convinced. And I mean, it didn't work out her way, and she was very mad, and she threw it at me. But besides that, that's like the type of situation that I get in once in a while. So it's an important lesson not to lose your cool. Just be nice.
Yeah, I've racked my brains. There's not a single situation in my life where I got angry and it made things better. Not one.
Right. Do you ever find yourself like typing away a response and realize you're starting to get very snarky?
Yeah, let's go with the specific. So I was rocking out. Thanks to you, I love good constructive criticism. So I'd been using REM pods at one location. I forget where it was, but it was last year. And you posted something about why are you doing this without a Faraday cage, man? And I'm like, he's right. And so I ended up making my own cheap out of baking, Faraday cage. And I now teach that to other people that use REM pods. If I just reacted and being like, oh God, of course it's Kenny being Kenny, as opposed to Kenny's making a valid point, you can't hear tone over the internet. So our brain, I think, predisposes us to the worst possible interpretation of any given sentence. So in my head, I heard, why are you using a REM pod again without a Faraday cage?
Richard.
When I could have heard it as, why are you using a REM pod without a Faraday cage?
Right.
Now, one of those is really useful. The other one annoys and irritates. And so I went with the better interpretation. Now I teach that whenever I'm on an investigation with other groups that don't know about it. I make a lid for it and all that kind of stuff. And the credit for that goes to you. And I actually had some fun afterwards on a slow night on the ambulance. I'd taken a REM pod, and we have pretty powerful vehicle-mounted radio sets on the ambulances. And we also have the hand portables, Yeah. So my partner and I had a blast seeing how far the ambulance radio set would trigger a REM pod. Drive a little bit, stop, trigger the radio. If I have time, one day I'll do it, and the chief will loan me an out-of-service rig. I'll probably do like an actual write-up and a study on distance. But it taught me that all those times in my career, if you want to call it that, when I'd had unexplained REM pod hits, I have never checked to see if a fire truck or a police cruiser or any vehicle with a mounted radio set was driving by at that time. Malvern Manor in Iowa, the firehouse is across the street. So you taught me something valuable. And if I had gone with my initial instinct of being bitchy, I would have missed out on a valuable lesson there. So I learned more than you realize.
Thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate that. And I want to build upon that and say, or request that if you actually do that experiment, if you could take video, because I would like to use that, because I've been working off and on. I mean, I started it like 2 years ago, but I started doing a video on REM pods and showing like how far I could be from it. And from my experiments, I could be inside of a house, and line of sight, I was 35 feet away, and I was making it go off with just the two-way, the cheap Walmart two-way radios. And that was And then that was 35 feet line of sight, but also in the basement and upstairs through the floor, I can make it go off anywhere, pretty much anywhere in the house. And then I found that outside in an open field, I was still getting about 20 feet away where I could make it go off. So I'm curious if I could, we need to work together on this.
Yeah.
I would love to get some segments from you where you're using these radios and showing like you driving away a little bit more and just finding that sweet spot where it cuts off. That would be interesting.
There's a large part. I feel like to go all in, I try it with an ambulance fairly easily. Probably even a fire truck is not that difficult. For the cost of a box of donuts, I could probably figure out what it would be for a police cruiser mounted radio too.
Oh.
And so, you know, again, though, it all comes back to that one comment you made. And I don't think you were trying to be a dick. I think you were asking a legit question.
Right.
It's all about how you want to perceive it.
And I totally agree. You don't get context. You don't get that tone of voice through texting. And often, like I kind of felt comfortable saying it to you because I think that was after we had met in person. So I was feeling a little bit more comfortable with you. We had spoken, so I was like, all right, I can just say this, and I don't think he's going to take it the wrong way. But often I have to put a disclaimer saying, look, hey, I'm not trying to be combative or confrontational. I have a curious question, and then I'll type my question out.
Yeah.
Because if I ask just a simple question, it usually goes the other way.
I'm not a psychologist in any way, shape, or form. I wonder, though, how many issues, large and small, in human society have been caused, especially over the last 20 years, by an inability to interpret tone correctly.
Right.
You know, people say we need a sarcasm font. I think it's actually not a bad idea.
I agree. I oftentimes, if I'm not sure, like most of the people that I do interact with online, I can call them. And if I'm not sure, I do call them.
Right.
And say, hey, you know, you said this, or are you pissed off at me? Or, you know, what's the deal? Were you joking? And usually it's a joke, which they didn't just articulate in the right way. So it's nice to be able to communicate like that, a secondary communication to clarify. But you're right, man. I mean, there's so many things that are being said where you can't take, you don't know how to take it. And there is that knee-jerk reaction. There's been plenty of times where I've written out 4, 5, 6 paragraphs like, oh, you're going to say that? I'm going to school you, bitch. Here we go. And then I get to the end. I'm like, once in a while, I'll actually hand my laptop to my wife and say, should I send this? She's like,
and the answer is always no if you have to ask, right?
Yeah.
That's where I do have one up on you, Kenny, because when I hit about 230, 250 words, that's when my brain reminds myself that's a whole page of a book.
Yeah.
That I just wasted on someone that's not going to care anyway.
Exactly. That's what I tell them all the time. I'm like, why are you responding to that person?
Yeah. She brings me back to Earth, planet Earth, and I move on. I delete it. And just
it's
move
like
on.
you're wasting precious time on somebody that's just not gonna get it.
Right.
You can only say so much before you walk away.
I'll tell you, don't do it in person though, because I'll chase you down. I've done that where I've chased people down. Like, no, we have to resolve this right now, and often like it's been when I have to apologize too, because usually we'll have a discussion, and it might get a little heated or a little intense, and then I realize after they have left, I realize that I was wrong about something, so I will go chase them down and apologize and say, I'm sorry, you were right. I looked it up. I made sure I was wrong. So thank you for standing your ground. And then we're friends again, which is nice. That's
always good.
Yeah. So I totally skipped over the first question I ask all my guests. So what's your origin story? Just in case some of the people that are watching don't know who you are. They're like, who's this Richard guy? But who are you? How did you get into whatever you were into?
So the short version is that I was a boy growing up in the United Kingdom in England, and my grandparents had this haunted house I would go stay at quite regularly. My grandfather was fighting the Japanese in Burma during the 1940s, and my grandmother was left to raise one of those fairly big World War II generation families alone. Germans bombing Hull at night. Hull was the city they lived in. So you can only imagine how hard a job she had. I almost think in some ways that the men that went off to war had a simpler time of it. I'm not making light of what they went through, but it was hell on earth for so many women raising big families on their own in the middle of a war zone. And my aunts and uncles all told stories of this old lady that would come into their bedroom at night to kind of tuck them into bed and make sure they were okay. And as they told the stories, none of them realized that this wasn't a friend of the family or someone that should be there. And when they finally did tell my grandmother, they identified it as being the previous tenant of the house who had died downstairs. And so the family came to believe it was the kindly old lady that was helping keep an eye on things while my grandmother needed an extra hand. When my grandfather returned, she stopped appearing. And I ended up alone in that bedroom, albeit 30-something years later. But if you can imagine, terrified, 6-7-year-old me, with the pillow, the blanket up to my kind of nose, half of me is hoping that she would kind of come because ghosts were cool, I realized, and half of me terrified that she might. And that was what sent me to. There was no paranormal TV in those days, of course. So you went to the library if you wanted to do more about this, or you went to the book club, and I read pretty much everything I could. So in Britain, it was authors like Peter Underwood. Was Andrew Green. Those were the ones that really started to inspire me. It was a lot harder to get American paranormal books, but they had. I recall very clearly reading some Harry Price books. Most Haunted House in England was one that just fascinated me. I read that book 8-9 times. And it's kind of a dry book too now, revisiting it as an adult. But that's really what set me on this road to wanting to know more about the paranormal and to writing about it.
Very cool. And you've published or have in the works about 29 books? Something
of that nature, yeah. Not being flippant, I just have not counted exactly recently.
I did. I went through your website, not that I'm a stalker, but I went through your website and I was like, wow, there's a lot of books here. And you dive not only into the paranormal, but you have things like serial killers. You talk about Gacy, John Wayne Gacy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you also have a book on UFOs in Colorado, I believe, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And what else? You have the haunted hospitals, or haunted healthcare, which I have.
Thank you very much.
And for anyone that's wants to be jealous, I have them autographed too. That's for everyone watching. But you have a lot of ghost books. So it looks like you travel a lot. One thing I want to ask, the Wellington Undead.
I like fiction too, and
okay.
It's not particularly big selling work, but that's not really why I write. Writing is something I do because I love it. I make my living as a paramedic and as an educator. That's what pays my mortgage, puts my food on the table. So I like to do fiction. I like to write fantastic stuff, and I need to do more of it, honestly.
I hear you. Fun. I love fiction. I love science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So I was I was actually big into, I don't know if you've heard them, Dragonlance novels. Yeah. I have pretty much every book in the Dragonlance series. I love that series. That has from when they were published up until now, I love that series. So when I saw this, I was like, Wellington Undead, that looks more like a fiction book rather than a true story or true ghost story kind of book. So I'm glad I got.
I got to tell you, so Dragonlance is cool, but if you and I are going to cross swords over anything tonight, it's Drizz for the win. If you're going to go with TSR and Wizards of the Coast, it's the Drizz novels that have it for me, man. I started reading those as soon as they came out in the 90s, I think it was. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I'm not.
R.A. Salvatore, like a 30-book series. Drow elves, essentially.
Okay. Very
really, really good. You're in for a treat if you haven't read them. They are phenomenal and keep coming out one a year. He's done one a year forever.
Wow.
It's like now I'm committed to this, relationship. I either have to die or he does, because I'm not letting go.
Yeah.
He's killed all of his protagonists at least once and brought them back. It's just unbelievable. But such good comfort food reading.
It's almost like I relate that kind of stuff to professional photographers. Like professional photographers usually pick a line, like Nikon. Like I'm a Nikon guy. So like with those kind of books, you pick it. Like Dragonlance has always been I follow the authors. I've spoken with the authors. I learned that they put new books out. So it's hard to jump titles, or jump authors, because you have that loyalty. So
you are allowed to see other authors, Dave. And
I know
Dave. Kenny, where did Dave come from?
I don't know. How much are you drinking?
Right, I'm on my first right now. And I've enjoyed Dragonlance, the Twins books and all that stuff. The Drizz books, I'll bet it was the same for you, caught me at that formative stage of my life.
Yeah.
And they just kind of work their way into your bloodstream. The books of Robert Heinlein did the same thing to me.
Okay.
Which weird for a kid from Britain, because he's one of the quintessential American science fiction writers. But Heinlein, I think, remains one of my top favorite authors of all time. And I still go back to his books now, especially Stranger in a Strange Land, Starship Troopers, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, Starship Troopers, nice. It's nice to break away. I mean, you obviously write a lot about one subject. Paranormal story, ghost stories and stuff. And I constantly read science books. So it's nice to give your brain a break and just go into that fantasy world.
It is. Have you ever had a hankering to write fiction?
Yeah, and I tried my hand at it like years and years ago, but it just never took off. They were, it's almost like they were too personal, and I just, this is just for me. I'm not gonna try and publish this at all. So
nothing wrong with that either. I think we do a terrible job generally equating success with sales, and I do this myself. I have to remind myself that if I'm happy with a book and 3 other people like it, it doesn't mean it wasn't worth me writing that book.
Right.
As long as I'm fulfilled, and even a couple of other people enjoyed it. So writing for the sake of writing is okay.
I hear you, and I translate that to articles. So the articles I write, sometimes I submit them, and I'm like, this sucks. No one's going to like this. And then I get emails from people thanking me for doing it. They didn't know that information and helped them. And that makes me feel so good, especially when I thought it was crap. And I do try my best. That's my passion. Writing is my passion. I think it's your passion. But I love to do it. I love to create either writing or video series. I love doing it. It's so, I get excited by information. When I learn something, I want to share it right away. And I can't help it. So it gets me excited.
Content creation is I think, a wonderful, healthy thing.
Yes.
And whatever is your chosen medium or format, have at it. And hats off to you if you're creating in any form.
I agree. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, I read that you occasionally do tours at the Stanley Hotel.
So no longer. I need to update my bio, but I did for 3 years.
Okay.
The Stanley was kind of right on my doorstep. I'd honestly wanted to write a book about it, which is a forbidden thing, is all I'll really say about that. It's not something I would be able to get permission for, I was told. Oh. So I wanted to kind of figure out the truth of what was going on up there, because we've all heard the tales. And I enjoyed doing the tours enough and just telling the stories verbally, being an oral storyteller, that I stuck up there for about 3 years. The Stanley is the grand old lady of the Rockies, and I have a lot of very happy memories of walking her hallways and telling her stories.
That's cool. So I guess what brought it up is that I looked into it a little bit, because it does come up. It does come up a lot, because people associate it most often with The Shining.
Yes.
And the Stanley was not actually, it didn't have anything to do with The Shining except for the inspiration from Stephen King.
Yep. Heartbroken. The number of heartbroken tourists that came up there and firstly said, why doesn't this look like the movie? And we would have to tell them because Mr. Kubrick shot that on sound stages in London.
Wow, yeah.
Right.
But hey, Stephen King shot his version, the miniseries here, if you've seen that. So people were heartbroken by that. And yes, the Stanley has a very happy history. There was no lady in a bathtub. There was no alcoholic janitor that murdered his family with an axe or anything like that. It was the inspiration for the book. And it's purely my opinion. I do not speak for the hotel in any way, shape, or form. I'm not employed by them. So this is purely my opinion. But I think the Stanley owes a large part of its survival to Stephen King. There should probably be a statue to him there.
I agree. And let me see, I wrote it down because I was amazed at this, but the exterior shots in The Shining were actually from the Timberline Lodge in Mount Hood, Oregon.
Yeah.
So that's the hotel that you see in the movie. And that's why probably people are like, why doesn't it look like
the reason is that you remember that great scene at the end of Kubrick's movie where Wendy and Danny, they disappear off into the blizzard and Jack's chasing them and the snowcat has been, the engine has been busted up, as I recall. So if they shot that at the Stanley, they would have gone about 200 feet and hit the McDonald's drive-thru.
Right.
Because the Stanley is so close to the town of Estes Park, it's not remote enough.
Right.
So my understanding is that they did send scouts to look at it, I think probably as a courtesy to Stephen King, who had said, look, the Stanley, despite the fact that the novel, if you read the beginning of King's novel, there is a disclaimer that says there are many haunted hotels in the Rocky Mountains. The Overlook is not any of them. And then the first chapter is Jack Torrance interviewing for his job, and you get the Stanley's history delivered to him by his hiring manager. It's the Stanley. So, I think they looked at it and it's just too close to the town of Estes Park. It's not remote enough. And it's even more so today. That's pretty obvious. So the Timberline is much more isolated and frankly, it looks like a better overlook.
It does. Compared the Stanley looks very Victorian, like it's very like shore town to me. It looks we've gone to Cape May a lot, and there's a lot of Cape May hotels, like the older hotels, that the Stanley resembles, and it's a much more cheerful kind of look, where the Timberline looks ominous. It looks like you approach this and it's like, all right, this is kind of gothic looking, so okay.
Yeah, you look at the Timberline, you think, if it's not haunted, it should be. Yeah. So I see why they did what they did. And Kubrick was all about stylistic choices. He was never going to shoot The Shining in the States anyway because he wouldn't fly. After, I think it was Spartacus, he never shot a movie outside the United Kingdom. This is a guy who brought Vietnam to London for Full Metal Jacket. He shot that at a gasworks. And my brother graduated boot camp at what appears to be Paris Island in the movie Full Metal Jacket. It was a British Army base. So Kubrick was never going to come here and do anything on location anyway.
Wow.
Okay. So I did, as I was going through your website, I was reading through your blog, and well, first and foremost, I want to say you are a fellow Star Wars geek.
Oh, yes.
Correct. I want to put that out there to everyone because I am a huge Star Wars fan, and when I saw that, I was like, oh, we're going to get along great. This will be fine. So which trilogy? Which is the best for you?
You know what? I've never understood this. No, I've never understood this Star Trek, Star Wars, DC, Marvel. Why do I got to choose? We're living in a golden age of nerdery right now.
Right, we are.
Dear God, we are spoiled for choice. There is so much good content coming out. And I know people love Star Wars fans can be, not all by any means, but there is a very toxic minority, most of them males for some reason, that are angry about something or other. It's fashionable to hate the prequels. Now it's fashionable to like them, especially after Kenobi. Funny how they're retconning history, isn't it? Some of the fans. I've always thought Hayden Christensen was excellent in that role. No, you haven't. Look at this blog post from 2006. I just love the fact, Kenny, that right now, I lived through the drought years when all the Doctor Who, which I'm a huge fan of, I could get was novels. When the only new Star Wars I could get between, let's see, Return of the Jedi and the special editions, that was a long dry period, was in novels, you know, and role-playing games and stuff.
Wow.
So now we live, breathe, and eat Star Wars. And if you don't like some of it, you know, too bad. I'm loving it.
Right. And that is the right answer as far as I'm concerned, because I'm a diehard for the originals. That's no secret. I love them because I grew up with them. So that's my go-to.
Right.
But I go back and forth. Some parts of the prequels I do like. And I will watch them over and over again. I won't refuse to watch them, but I'll watch them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll sit quietly for the good parts, and then the bad parts, I'm like, this sucks. Fuck this.
I will say they get increasingly better. Revenge of the Sith is superb. Attack of the Clones is a great cheeseburger. Phantom Menace has some parts that I had to remind myself, though, when I watched Phantom Menace, that was not made for me. When I saw Phantom Menace, I was 26. That was made for the equivalent of 5-year-old Richard. Probably my first solid memory, Kenny, is sitting and the red movie theater curtains opening and this Star Destroyer coming over my head, and it keeps coming and coming and coming and coming. You know, my jaw is dropping, and Star Wars leaked into my bloodstream. It's never left. And you know full well that there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of kids that the Phantom Menace hit just like that.
Yeah.
Prequels weren't made for us, I don't think.
Right.
They were made for them.
I agree. Yeah. And you're right. That scene, same thing. That was just first time we ever saw that, and that brings out the kid in me every time I see it on the screen. Yeah, I love it. All right. Enough geeking out, because I could talk about Star Wars all day. So let's see. Skepticism. I want to talk about skepticism. This is a skeptical show, and you are a paranormal investigator. You're an author that writes a lot about ghost stories, and I like to get opinions of people like yourself about skepticism. What do you think about people that are more skeptical? Are they benefit? Are they a hindrance? Do they hinder? Oh my God, I can't say the word. Do they hinder the? And I call it a hobby. I don't mean that as an insult. I just see ghost hunting and paranormal investigation as more of a hobby overall. But how do you view skepticism?
I think firstly, skeptics get a bad rap because this is probably something you can confirm or deny, but my understanding of a skeptic is somebody who says, well, that's a pretty far out claim. So what is the evidence? And as I wrote in your book, and to how many decimal places?
Yes.
Which I stole from Heinlein. I'm not that literate, right? But I've always remembered that. Heinlein's the guy that said, facts are your guide to charting your way through uncharted waters of life. So I think skeptics just say, okay, so what have you got to back up these crazy claims? Because they're pretty wild. But I think X-Files did us a real disservice when you have the believer and the skeptic, and you have Agent Scully seeing actual alien invasions that she then disavows. I mean, come on, Ken. You saw an actual spaceship landing. Even if you don't have your iPhone in your pocket at the time, you'd probably hang it up, right? And say, all right, they were right all along.
Yeah. Right.
The sunburn would help, wouldn't it?
I would say, I would turn around to everyone and go, you know what? I was wrong. All of you were right. Can I drive? That's it. Let me drive this thing.
Let me ask you, how many times in your career have you been described or compared to Scully?
Very few.
Really?
Honestly.
Very few.
Very Scully.
No.
Because at least when X-Files was on, people would describe Agent Scully won't believe anything. Sees a lake monster, doesn't believe it. Sees a ghost, doesn't believe it. Whereas I think skeptics, the true ones, the open-minded ones, are saying, all right, so let's see where the evidence leads. And one of the reasons I was happy to come on your show, you put your money where your mouth is. You're not just an armchair skeptic. I was at the Hinsdale house upstairs in the master bedroom, and I find an Etch-a-Sketch. And who had despoiled it?
You made my day when you said that to me. That was awesome. Because Because what
Uh-huh.
I so upstairs in the main bedroom there was an Etch-a-Sketch up
Yeah, there were toys upstairs. Yeah.
and I left a message on it, and he found it. Yeah.
What did it say?
What did I write? Do you remember?
I think it was just Kenny was here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He was here. That's it. But yeah, that was. I do have fun, and I think it's. I mean, I did have an anger phase. Most of the locals that watch the show know this.
Mm-hmm.
There was a part where when I was transitioning from, and these are stereotypes, from believer to skeptic.
Yeah.
I was angry, and I was angry at myself because I realized I did so much wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing so much wrong, and instead of taking it out on myself, I took it out on other people, people that I had associated with before, fellow believers. So I was a dick for a while, and then realized, that's not the way to go. So,
but you at least put boots on the ground, and as you'll recall from that same trip, when I had something that I found very difficult to explain, I called you for a consult.
Yeah,
which you seem kind of surprised at, actually.
I did not expect it. I mean, I appreciate it, and it's not like, what the fuck is he calling me for? It was more like, oh, cool. He's got something, and he's reaching out. Cool, yeah. Let me hear it. Let me see what can I offer. What can I bring to the table here, and let's see if we can figure this out.
Yeah, I think you do your Skeptical Help bar. I've seen you at the bash, and I think that if more skeptics and I don't want to say believers, because it's a continuum, right? It's a spectrum,
right?
And we all fall at different places on it, depending on where you set your bar for acceptable evidence,
right?
But I think if more people at the opposing ends of that spectrum were willing to sit down and seek each other's opinion, we would at least have a less toxic field of endeavor. Yes. I would say that about it. I would just love to lose some of the toxicity. So. And I knew you had just been in the house, so the layout was fresh in your mind. The acoustics were fresh in your mind. You'd spent the night there. You knew what the creaks sounded like, and you knew what how air moved through, all that kind of stuff that I'm interested in. And I thought, well, I've no good explanation for why I heard what sounds like a cat meowing in an empty living room with 6 other people hearing it too, and it shows up on a recorder. I got nothing. I tried a couple things. I tried debunking it. I sent somebody down to the crawl space playing cat noises up through the floorboards. Didn't sound remotely the same. I'm out of ideas. And in medicine, you seek a second opinion, or you're an idiot.
Right. Yeah.
How many of us in the field seek a second opinion from someone who is not of the same views as them? Because it's almost meaningless asking someone who sees the world the same way you do. You've got an echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Right at that point, and that's not useful to me. It's nice validation. You can have 19 people saying "Great catch, man," and that's warm and fuzzy. But you want an opposing viewpoint, you want a respectful one. Reach out to a skeptic that you trust.
I do not like the phrase "good catch." It's such a common thing, and I think people use that so quickly without even looking or listening or evaluating or analyzing anything. It's real quick. But I agree. It's oftentimes when I'm not sure about something, and that happens a lot, I reach out to other people. I have a list of experts that I can go to and to say, hey, you're good. You're an electrician, or you're a carpenter, you're a plumber. Hey, I have this weird noise. Do you know what this is? Or this happened while I was there. Can you give me insight? Because you have people with different perspectives, different backgrounds, different skill sets will have different experience, and they can bring something different that you're not going to think of to the table. And that's what we should be looking for. And exactly what you said, you should be looking for a second opinion. You should be looking for a third opinion and a fourth opinion. I mean, until you find out exactly what it is, until you can conclusively say, we know without a doubt it was this, and we can replicate it. Excuse me. You should keep going until you find an answer, because if you don't have an answer, it is unsolved. It doesn't mean it's a ghost. It just means it's unsolved.
And I feel that's like a difference needs to be made more often. Firstly, though, if your only tool is a hammer, every problem's a nail, right? And so every creaky floorboard is not a ghost, like you said. And it's perfectly okay to arrive at a conclusion. In this case, you and I agree on that sound in that neither of us knows what it is.
Right.
I'm not willing to say, oh, I recorded the phantom cat of Hinsdale House. I recorded something that sounds a lot like a cat in the Hinsdale House, which is said to be haunted. But when I write books, I hope that I tell people what I think, but not what they should think. You know, draw your own conclusion. And there's a real difference between telling people what you think and what, you know, what they ought to think as well.
Right.
Yes, I agree with Aaron completely. Get opinion from someone else. I blew my back out in 2010. It was my own fault. I climbed 110 stories of a skyscraper with 50 pounds of weight on my back. And which turns out, I was a firefighter. It was the 9/11 Memorial Challenge.
All right. Context was really
yeah. Like, why are you scaling a building?
So, there aren't any 110 story skyscrapers in Denver. So we did a 50 something story skyscraper twice. Blew out my back, which, you know, turns out fat guys maybe shouldn't do that. But so I had this back pain, and my doc said, I'm going to refer you to a surgeon. And the surgeon said, well, yeah, you have a bulging disc, you need surgery. And then everybody says, get a second opinion, right?
Yeah.
And then I learned that a surgeon is always going to recommend surgery. That's what they know. That's their wheelhouse. Somebody else said, hey, get an acupuncturist. And I'm like, interesting. It's significantly cheaper than surgery, so I'll try anything once. I know. Turns out it worked, Kenny. It made my hand hurt more than my back while they stuck needles in my hand. Didn't fix the problem.
We're gonna.
I should have spent the $50 on alcohol. You know, but the point is, though, you definitely need to look at kind of different experts before you jump into your final conclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the surgeon said, look, the cure is real. The pain is the pain is real. The cure is steel. And that was so slick, so Top Gun. And I'm like, you've used that before, mate. And he was right in that case. But there are other cases in which you might want to try something before surgery. Turns out that there are, you know, with lesser bulges, that there are other treatment modalities. So in medicine, I always tell people seek a second opinion. And that's never a bad idea in life with any big decision.
Right.
Yeah,
it's just good advice all around. I don't like when I don't know equals it's a ghost or a demon or something like that, or an alien or Bigfoot, you know, what have you. It burns me up. It really gets me going because it's like, why? If you don't know, then you don't know. And the world. The world's wealth of information is not in one person's head. You know, you have to search out other people. You have to seek out experts in other fields and get their opinions, because it might be something simple to like me. You know, if somebody shows me a photograph who has never worked a camera except for pushing the button, you know, to them, a photographic anomaly may seem like wondrous or supernatural. To me, I look at it and go, oh, yeah, I've seen that. It's lens flare, and we can duplicate it. Give me your camera. I can show you how to do this. And it's a beautiful thing, but they would only know that by reaching out to someone different.
But I think what we're ignoring here is the fact that people have a vested interest these days in so much. One of the principles I live my life by, especially when it comes to the paranormal, but it now applies to everything except math, is that my desire to work with someone or to spend time with someone or to listen to someone is usually inversely proportional to how certain they are on their expertise in the subject.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because that way lies, if you keep going, that way lies fanaticism.
Yeah.
So you get those that are so convinced that their way is the only way, that all hauntings are demonic. That's one we see so much, especially in the US. You know, that all Ouija boards are bad all the time and get portals to hell. Pick whatever trope you want. But when it comes to self-interest, I'm lucky that I have a few friends that are detectives who always say, ask yourself, you know, Richard, who benefits? And so I've had those cases where I've driven to, let's say I've driven 300 miles to a building that I've rented because it's on my bucket list. You know, it's an iconic I won't name any names, but it's on my bucket list. It's been described as the most haunted place in 5 states, and I've had the quietest night. No one likes that feeling of, I won't even say being suckered, but having sunk time and money and anticipation and inconvenience into going to a haunted place and getting no activity. No one likes that feeling. And so if you don't catch yourself, you'll start wanting every creak to have a deeper meaning than it's the structure calling. You know? Yeah. I've spent thousands of dollars, many people would say wasted, tens of thousands of dollars on going to places where literally nothing happened. One fairly well-known location I won't name, my abiding memory of it is how unhygienic their men's room was, you know? And I spent $1,000 for the privilege of spending a night there. That being said, would I trade the experience? No. But boy, the temptation for every settling noise to have meaning, for you to not feel suckered, you know? Right. And people start attaching their identities to this, their sense of self-identity. I'm a medium, I'm an empath, I'm a ghost hunter. I am special, and I don't not get things. I know that's terrible grammar, but hopefully I make my point.
I get it.
Because nobody wants to be the sucker.
Right. And I'm right there with you. Like, I understand that. I can understand both sides. For me, I spend money on events like that. Mm-hmm. I don't expect much. I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful. I want to make that clear to everyone. I'm always hopeful that something will happen that will amaze me, that will knock my metaphorical socks off. But I don't expect anything. I'm going for the experience. I'm going to say, hey, I was there. These were the claims, especially if I get to rent the place for myself, or I have the time where I can go through all the claims that I think are testable and actually test them. You know, for me, that's worth it. Even if nothing happens and all I get out of it is a quiet night's sleep, mm-hmm. It's still worth it to me because I was able to do my experiments and test it and come away with data and a story that I can write about.
And it's still an adventure, right? Which at the end of the day, that's what I love.
Absolutely.
I also don't feel, though, just to look at it from the other side, I also am not a proponent of those skeptics that will go to a location for 4 or 6 or 8 hours, have nothing happen, and declare this place is not haunted. It was never haunted. It cannot be haunted because nothing happened to me while I was there. I think that you also need to look at the body of claims, right? The big problem, I think, and I love that you mentioned testable claims. So much of what we deal with that is anecdotal, and therefore, of course, it's subjective.
Yes.
And that's the rub, right? And the haunted healthcare books that you have right there, it's got some of my own experiences in, but the people I interviewed, doctors, nurses, patients, their experiences are crazy. And in many cases, not a lick of evidence that is objective and verifiable to support them. They're completely subjective. It's fascinating how many instances of them there are. I've talked to, I think it's fair to say, hundreds of healthcare providers with similar experiences during my career. But there's always that nagging voice in my head that says, and yet where's the good video evidence? Right. And yet where is that one piece of good high def 4K camera footage that would settle this issue once and for all?
I want to touch on what you said there is, I agree that I don't agree. I'm not particularly in agreement with skeptical people or cynical people mm-hmm. that will go to a place for 4 hours and declare this place is not haunted.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that coin, I also have a problem with ghost hunters, paranormal people that go to a place for 4 hours and declare it is absolutely haunted.
Yeah.
Because that's a problem on both sides. Whereas, are there testable claims? Can you test it? Mm-hmm. If you do have so-called evidence, and another pet peeve is when people post on social media that they're going to this place tonight and they can't wait to get all the evidence. Like, that to me pisses me off because they're already in that mindset that they're not only going to get something, but it's
Absolutely.
going to be evidence, which is a lot more foresight than most psychics have. So
No objectivity there, right? Your objectivity is shot. It's the same. It would be the same as if a detective sat down to interview you and posted, interviewing Kenny Biddle, can't wait to get some evidence about the murders he did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wait, what?
Like, wait, what's this interview about?
I'm sorry. I know I promised I wouldn't tell anyone. It slipped out.
Well, it happens. It's all right. But yeah, I mean, there's, when I go to a place, and like the Hinsdale house, which you mentioned, I mean, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I went there. I spent the night there. The most I got I got a few things out of it. I got a really good night's sleep. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was so quiet. I was out cold. And slept through the night, which is great. I hardly ever do that. But I also was able to find some flaws in methodology and or some of the stories out of there. One of which was EMF. The router that they have in the living room there gives off a massive EM field, which I was reading from the kitchen and upstairs. So that's a big deal. And that kind of information is important to me because it's like, all right, so if people go in there and say, oh, I got an EMF spike, where were you? Living room. Oh, well, there's a problem there. Did you consider this? And most cases they didn't. But these are, even though these are good examples of information that I got and benefits that I got out of staying there, and nothing paranormal happened to me, I can't say that the place is or isn't haunted. Yeah. I just can't, because maybe if there are ghosts, maybe they just didn't like me.
Or maybe it just wasn't the right evening, or 100 maybes, right? I do like, my favorite people in this field, no matter what their specific beliefs, are the ones who say, I don't know what's going on. Lots of weird things seem to happen. Weird things have happened to me, to people that I know. Here are my hypotheses. Everyone loves to say theories, but of course a theory is testable, right? And tested. And I try to explain this every time I can. You start with a hypothesis, and theory is almost the end. Derived from testing and research and all kinds of stuff. And the only thing above theory is scientific law. Yes. So there's a lot of steps in between. So I love the people, and I've been blessed with knowing a lot of them, that are willing to just say, I don't know. And because I don't know, let's do this again next month or next week. I like the people that are constantly asking questions, constantly learning. Those are the cool cats in this field, not the ones that will tell you this is how it is. Our place is demonically infested and this and that and the other. The more someone lays down the law, the less inclined I am to want to be involved. Okay. Let's see what time. Well, we still got some time. So, gadgets. Do you use any kind of ghost hunting gadgets? Fewer and fewer as I get older. Like everybody else, I began with shock horror, the K2. Bless my heart. And I know still people today that talk about getting good K2 hits. And I'll look at them and I'll talk about routers and cell phones and things like that. And they'll say, oh, no, these were intelligent because they were coming. It's like the mag light, the flashlight trick. There are those folks that just swear by those. And I used to, because I didn't know better when I first started out. The more I do this, the less I lean on tech. I do have friends and colleagues that are very tech invested, but I've become more of a storyteller as I get older. So I'm more looking at moving the pieces around for an investigation. Do I use REM pods? Only now with Faraday cages, rigged up Faraday cages. I did learn that lesson. Stuff like the Ovilus fascinates me, simply because it's been almost useless on many occasions. And then I've seen some hits that have just knocked my socks off. And knowing you're probably going to point out that even a broken clock tells the right time twice a day, right? My psychic powers are in full force. This is great. I don't even have to participate in the show. He's doing both sides. And when you talk with the mediums and you get some zingers, we psychologically don't think, we phase out the number of misses it took to get each hit, right? So things of that nature. But no, I'm becoming less tech inclined the older I get. I do like to work around folks that are using those tools and that swear by them, but I'm less convinced. I had a great conversation with Billy Chappell because I'd been pretty, I think it's fair to say, uncomplimentary about SLS cameras. And Billy and I talked about that for a couple of hours and some of the pros and cons of how these things give false positives and how much worse that can be when the handheld units are being used. So my SLS camera was consigned to my junk room as well. So my actual usable kit bag now has gotten pretty small. But, that's my approach. And I'm not saying thou shalt not, and I'm not saying my way is the only way. But I've become increasingly disillusioned with tech over the years of doing this.
Well, yeah. I mean, Ovilus, I have one, and I've played with it. I've had it sometimes when I have gadgets like that you pretty much turn on and let go. Just let them go. I'll sit here and work on a project, and I'll have it sitting here and just going and see what happens. And it's come up with weird stuff, but I have the football looking one. Yeah. So it's come up with just standard words, and oftentimes it actually said like the same word 3 or 4 times in a row, which was interesting because I was doing little tests, and I would have like a magnet that I'd go over it, and I could make it say the same word over and over again. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I wonder if that's part of the algorithm, where it's filling in, it's getting that magnetic field and just saying, oh, well, this reading, I'm going to spit out this word. I don't know. But I find it random. I find it completely random. And I guess my big thing with it kind of goes off of what you said. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. I mean, if you're in an environment and it has a library of words that it chooses from, what's in that library? Yeah. Is it words specific for what a ghost hunter would be expecting to hear? If you have furniture, you have dates or color. I mean, think of the typical questions that people ask. What's your name? How did you die? Right. What's your favorite color? I mean, I've heard people say that, but it might not come up. But even like, what color is my hair? What color is this that I'm holding up? I mean, I could see those being programmed in there because it's specific to that genre. I get that. The one knockout that I had with the Ovilus I'll never forget was at the Fairfield Inn in Gettysburg. It's an old tavern in the town of Fairfield, so a few miles outside the town itself, scene of a cavalry battle. So I'm sitting in this inn, which dates back to the 1700s, and the Ovilus spat out the words in succession, Southern Canon, and there was a brass plaque on the wall above me telling you that a Confederate artillery battery had been stationed there on July 4, 1863. At Southern Canon. And I'm like, that's creepy. So did it said what? Southern Canon? Yeah, so Southern, like the South, Southern. South, yeah. Canon. And the plaque said that too? So the plaque, so that's what the Ovilus said, those 2 words, Southern Canon. The plaque explained that this was where an artillery battery from the Confederacy had been stationed during the battle. Okay. So I thought that was pretty interesting. If that is just a coincidence, it's one hell of a coincidence, which it may have been. It may. Yeah, I can't help but think, I'm like, all right, well, that's your one for the day, right? I'm used to being in Gettysburg, so like the word cannon coming up would not surprise me. Yeah. And I guess my main thing is that I have not been able to access the library of that, of the Ovilus, and I would like to see the catalog of words that are in there, because that would be really important. I had a guy that was going to help me out. He was having a little trouble with it, but we're working on it, trying to get that catalog, because I want to see what's programmed into it. Sure. Like if it's not spitting out random words, well, at least the one that I have will not spit out random words. It's only going to spit out what it's programmed to spit out. So like words like I don't Superman, Skywalker, that's not going to be in there, you know? So if I say like, what's my favorite character in Star Wars, it's not going to spit out Darth Vader. It's just not going to do it. And that's what I would expect. when I deal with people that are into like doing ghost box sessions where it's going through a radio, scanning through the frequencies, I usually ask people to, hey, when you're at home, turn on the local news and do your EVP questions there. Like all the questions that you said this tonight, do the same thing for your local news and tell me how many are answered.
Yeah.
And I think that's not being confrontational, but that's showing you like you are using a random device.
Yeah, I think that's fair. One thing that with so-called ghost boxes, one thing that fascinates me is when you get absolute like major profanity through one, you know, the kind of words that I would normally reserve only for politicians, because you know that's not something that the FCC would tolerate on the airwaves.
Right.
So that I always find interesting, you know, when you hear some hardcore swearing, that I find difficult to believe is picking up just broadcasts.
So I think this is when the subjectiveness comes in because it's interpretation. Is it really swearing? Are we actually hearing a swear word, or is it in relation to the question being asked? Is it contextual to the question being asked, and that's what we're hearing? Because some of these ones, and I'm only speaking from observations of recordings that people have sent me.
Right.
And so it's a very small data set here where they've sent me these recordings and said, look, this is a Class A, which, full disclaimer, I hate the classes because they're never Class A. They send me the recordings and say, look, you know, this is telling me, fuck you. And
right.
I listen to it and I don't hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, it's right after like the third knock, because I knock on the table and the third knock, you hear it. And I hear something completely different.
The kiss of death is always when somebody says, you really need headphones for this. But that being said, I mean, I don't know. I'm not willing to go as far as to say that a faint EVP could not be an EVP. And my Class A might be different than your Class A. In fact, it must be by definition. So we come back to that subjectivity, as you pointed out, of where is that bar, you know?
Right.
I suspect there's very little likelihood of any EVP ever convincing you. I think it's the truth of it, you know? And knowing that that's your starting position, for me at least, it's a case of vive la différence, and why would I even try?
I mean, I do listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's, if I can hear the same thing you do, then I would find it interesting. And sometimes that's what I do hear. Unfortunately, there's also another balance there, because if I'm primed beforehand to hear that, then yes, I'm going to hear what you're priming me for. So I always ask people, don't tell me anything about it. Just send me the clip. Let me listen to it. And if I do hear something, I'll tell them this is what I hear.
Right.
And I'll put it through my own software and enhance it as much as I can, which I don't like doing because that manipulates it and starts changing the tone. But I'll say, look, this is what I hear. Does it match what you do? And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. But when it does, then it's okay. Well, let's go further with this. You know, let's look into it further because now I'm interested.
Right.
So I think that's where the difference between what I do and maybe somebody that's more cynical that would just dismiss it and say, no, you're just getting somebody farted or something like that, you know, and let's move on.
Yeah, I think, let me ask, I'm curious, Kenny, I'd love to ask you this. So
Absolutely.
Are you open to the possibility that there might ever at some point have been a genuine EVP? Or do you suspect every so-called EVP since the first recordings we're aware of made by Rowdiv is simply audio pareidolia?
So that's a black and white question.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's just the two choices.
Okay.
Because we have interpretation. Are there controls in place when these were taken? Was it a recorder that was just left in a room and everyone left for like dinner, for 2 hours and it was left alone and there's no accountability of what actually happened in that room at the time?
Yeah.
So those simple conditions make it hard for me to say, well, yeah, I believe what you're saying. I don't think people are lying to me,
No, I don't think so either.
I can't accept something just because, like, I have a recording and it says this. Okay, if it is a voice, or if I hear a voice, how do I know it's not a person?
That's a fair point. You do have to have camera footage of the scene, so you know. We had one what sounded like a great EVP, and it's only because we had a camera running that we improved. In fact, it was somebody yawning through no fault of their own. It sounded like, a very unusual voice. They didn't realize they'd yawned, and none of us remembered it because it's not something we tend to flag.
Right.
One change I've made, though, since thinking a little bit about your REM pod suggestion, when I do EVP sessions now, I will run 2 recorders simultaneously, one of them in a Faraday cage.
Mm-hmm.
And I've yet to get an EVP on the Faraday cage recorder or anything that I might class as an EVP, which supports your position, I feel, in this case.
That's interesting.
Yeah, run them parallel. Now, if you were to get one on both, that would be a stronger claim, I would argue, towards it being potentially paranormal, right? You're ruling out all of that broadcasting.
Right.
You're ruling out, because if it's a kind of a not so decent recorder and it's unshielded, yes, there is a possibility for it to pick up radio waves. And if you're blocking those out altogether and you're not getting anything, or if you do get something on it, then again, it falls into that category of, hey, that's interesting. That should not happen. Now you have my interest. Let's explore.
And I've gotten some strange looks from people, primarily at public events, when I've started doing this, and I've been running the REMs side by side, Faraday, no Faraday recorders, same deal. And there's almost an attitude on the part of some people of, but if I do this, I'll get less evidence, right? And I'm like, no. If you do this, you'll get less false positives.
Right.
Yeah.
But it'll be less exciting too, won't it?
Yeah.
And that's really a big deal, right? To a lot of people, it's that whole, this is my weekend, man. I came out for the weekend and I took a trip. And it's so much more exciting to think that noise is than to use more rigorous standards and cut out some of the background noise. So and I'll tell you, I've gotten significantly less EVPs since I started doing it, but I do feel a little more confident about the fewer that I do get.
I think we have to remember that they're not collecting evidence per se; they're collecting data.
Yeah, that's fair.
That data has to be analyzed and reviewed and determined to be evidence for something.
Yeah,
and there's an entire step. There's a couple steps that are being skipped, where they're just recording and saying we have evidence.
That's a great point. I should not call it evidence right off the bat either. Problem is, though, we can't agree what constitutes evidence, can we? You can get 10 people together with you at one end of the spectrum, Kenny, and then somebody who believes without question at the other, 8 people, shades of gray in between. Our bar for what we'll accept as evidence is going to be radically different.
I agree, and I think that's why we need more data. I think the more data you have, the more you can present your case. Yeah. And say, look, I have all this data backing up this. I have this idea. I believe that this is what's going on here. Here is the data to back that up. We've analyzed it. We've gone through it. Here are the flaws of the machinery that we did. We compensated for that. We controlled for these variables. We have this data still out. We have these anomalies in the data we cannot account for. And we think it might be pointing to this. And we think it deserves further inquiry. So let's go. That's definitely more on the academic published paper side, peer-reviewed side. But I think that's what people, if you are out to prove the afterlife exists, that ghosts exist, if you're out to prove with evidence and claiming to be scientific.
Well, if you're out to prove that, and I apologize for interrupting you, Kenny.
That's all right.
But you have that bias you just talked about. You shouldn't be out to prove this exists at all. You should be out trying to figure out what's going on.
Right.
Sorry, I just felt that was an important distinction.
No, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with that. When I investigate, I'm investigating to find out what's happening.
Right.
What is the cause of this testable claim? That's why I'm testing it, to find out what's going on. And that's what I'll present. I'm not trying to prove ghosts don't exist. I'm not trying to prove they do exist. I'm trying to say, hey, this is where the data led me. There you go.
The one thought experiment I always like to talk about is if somehow magically, if we can posit that you and I are in the 1800s, and let's say that I'm the sawbones doctor in a Wild West town, right? And you are another doctor as well.
Okay.
And we suspect that our patient, who has a series of headaches, suspect that they may have a brain tumor. Now, with the short of sawing their head open, there is no way until the age of the X-ray and the CT that we can definitively prove that this particular pathology is happening, correct?
Right.
It is, but our frame of reference, the scientific tools available to us, just isn't there, and it won't be for another 100 years and some change. So I always wonder how much of the stuff that is reported that's anomalous, we don't have a capacity to measure, to rule it in or out definitively. But give it another 100 years, 200 years, we understand the properties of our universe better. There's no such thing as the paranormal. We just have an inadequate understanding of normal, you know? So I really wonder what people like us are going to be talking about in 200 years and laughing at the kind of debates we've had, you know? Because the 1800s brain tumor, if it had happened 100 years later, could have been solved with one quick image of the cranium.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
That does.
Yeah.
That's the thing that keeps me up at night, honestly. What will they know in 100 or 200 years, thanks to technological and scientific advances, that we are attributing to mysticism today?
All right. While we think about that, we're going to take our break because we're a little bit over our pee break time. And I know some of the locals are probably going, I got to pay. So we're going to take our break. It is a 3-minute break. So feel free to fill up your cup and then, exit your bladder. And we'll be back here. We're going to take viewer questions. So people watching, if you have a question for Richard, put a Q in front of it, please, and post it in the comments, and we will get to it in the second hour. And this has been fun so far. I'm having a great time. So
Me too.
This is great. All right, so here we go. We're going to our commercial in 3, 2, and 1.
Do satanic cults lurk in the shadows? Can memories of satanic ritual abuse be repressed? Do exorcisms really drive out demons? And are those demons always possessing Zach Baggins? I'm JD Sword, the Satanic Skeptic. Join me on The Devil in the Details as I examine these questions and more, bringing a skeptical and satanic perspective to the paranormal. The Devil in the Details, available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and more.
Jetham for us. Jetham for us. Hail Satan. Hail Satan.
Are you tortured by what you see and hear about the paranormal field? Join us as we critically examine and question paranormal claims, science, ghosts, demons, cryptids, UFOs, ghost hunting technology, and much more are all on the table for discussion. 3 Tortured Souls is a video podcast that streams live on Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 Pacific.
3 Tortured Souls.
All right, we are back. And I got to say, I pointed this out before the show started, but I absolutely love the skeleton.
Oh, thank you.
It's awesome. What was the name again?
His name is Barry Shitpeas.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. Oh, my goodness. All right, we have a few questions up. So, again, anyone that has questions for Richard or for both of us, feel free to put it up, put a Q in front of it. I'm going to get to some of these questions now, and we'll see how long it takes for us to get through them. So, you ready for this, Richard?
Let's go for it. I'm sorry, I was just reading the questions.
Oh, okay. I'm just going through. Let's see. From Bob. Hey, Bob. Have you ever tried the Aura glasses? Had to ask. Kenny is a huge fan of them. Oh, my goodness. So I'll show you. I do another show on Saturday nights called Three Tortured Souls. And we were talking about, once in a while, we do a topic called What's New in the Paranormal. And we just look at new trends.
Okay.
And one of the things I found was these Aura glasses. So these are the instructions. That's the 3 different ones. And I got the 3D glasses version because that was the cheapest.
Aha.
But these are supposed to let you see the aura of people and also allow you to see ghosts.
Really?
Apparently, that's what
somebody should put this in a movie.
I know.
You'd need like a decent number of ghosts, you know, at least a dozen, if a baker's dozen.
Baker's dozen. Yeah. So,
Note
like the original or the remake?
I'd say the remake because Shannon Elizabeth.
Oh, good answer. So these are the ones, and I'm going to let everyone see. I'm going to put them over the camera.
Do not move, Kenny, because right behind you.
Do you see any ghosts? Any? No.
Yeah,
you can
I do. Oh, wait. That looks like Casper.
It looks like, and my wife described this the best way. We were wearing these earlier, and she described it as being in one of those, like a roller rink or an arcade where everything is neon. Everything is black light. Because when you go outside, I don't know if you can actually see it. Good. So there it goes. The camera adjusted a little bit, but a lot of stuff almost appears like it glows. Like my beard kind of glows a little bit. The lab coat glows, but when you go outside, it makes it look like you're in a neon or like an 80s party. That's what it looks like, a 1980s party. But
that's revolutionary. I must have some.
I'll work on that. I've been talking to the maker of them. I don't know if he's going to like me after my review, but oh well. All right, thanks, Bob, for that question. Let's see what else. Another one to clarify. Where are you on the believer scale? Leans believer, on the fence, leans skeptic.
Bob leans believer, but not sure believer in what. I know that we tend to equate ghosts equals dead people. I think that's much too simplistic an explanation. Short version is something weird is going on. I believe that for sure. If it's not a genuine paranormal thing, then the fact that this widespread social phenomenon remains unexplained is weird enough in itself, right? The fact that it's happening is plenty weird. But yeah, leans believer, but not sure exactly in what.
Okay.
Probably not demons, though.
No. What do you think about the people that are either demonologists, self-proclaimed, because that's usually what they are, or claim that every place is demonic or there's demons everywhere? How do you address that?
All right. So first of all, I know a few self-proclaimed demonologists, and they're good people, and they have their belief system, and I respect their right to their belief system. And I respect a lot of them as human beings, and some as friends. I just don't see the world the way that they do. Okay. My thought on this is that I began doing this in about 1995 in the UK. And back then, everything I knew about ghost hunters, air quotes, of course, these were middle-aged gentlemen in tweed jackets with leather patches and a pipe.
Yes. That
would wander around, saying, Kenneth, I do believe this is where the The apparition of the lady in the long ball gown is to glide through this door without opening it. Isn't that? I'm going to make a note in my journal. That's kind of, how it was. And
Right.
then I love that stuff. Late night creepy storybooks. And then along came TV. And I bear some responsibility for this as much as anyone, because we've made this scarier, I think, than it needs to be, significantly.
Yeah.
Scary sells, and that's unfortunate. So I'd never run across a so-called demonic haunting until I came to the States. And even then, I know the Warrens had done their thing, and there have been some books published by people like Robert Curran that talked about it, and so forth. But it was only with the advent of certain TV shows really pushing that demon concept that this exploded. And somebody is either going to get probably a PhD, if not at least a master's degree, out of writing the history of this, of how our accounts of demonic hauntings exploded when they became so prevalent on TV. You could graph, I feel very confident, that you could graph the number of reports of demonic infestations, quote unquote, with the ratings explosion of certain shows.
Interesting.
And again, who benefits?
Yeah. All right, cool. You good?
Mhm.
Ready? All right, awesome. Aaron, my buddy Aaron is up. Did you buy or build your Faraday cage? If bought, where? The bags for sale are not good.
Hi, Aaron. Go ahead.
I want to comment real quick. I agree. The bags suck.
Mhm.
I definitely recommend not buying them because they do not work. Everyone that I've come across, as soon as I key up a two-way radio, it goes right through. Doesn't work. So go ahead.
So I have a friend that built one, which I think is pretty cool, with commercial grade material. I'm not a handy person. Having been on the fire department as a volunteer, I'm great at breaking things. I can't even put up a shelf. So I'm not a guy. I know, I should turn in my man card, right? I'm not a guy that constructs stuff. But if I'm at a pinch, if I'm traveling, and I think you've seen pictures, I will go to the store and I will buy baking trays, and I will buy 6 of those and duct tape them together. And that is my Faraday cage. And having tested that with radio transmitters, it's usually good for shielding radio transmissions from about everything up to about 6 inches from contact with the material itself.
Very cool.
So
I'm going through, I'm trying to find the picture that you posted.
yeah, it ain't pretty, but it works.
And that's the point. I mean, you have to be able to block. Like, I built one, and I actually don't have it. I packed it up because we're doing a conference tomorrow, that Para-UAV conference. So I have it. I'm going to take it there to show it off. But I built mine out of, I had some 2x4s that I was like, what can I do with this? And I built a box and then wrapped it with multiple layers of aluminum screening for like a screen door.
Yeah.
And aluminum foil, multiple layers, until I was confident that it was blocking AM signals, because AM signals are much smaller than FM. So I made sure it blocked those. And then I put extra layers on top of that, just to be sure. Yeah. So when you put any of these like ghost boxes or the big expensive ones with guitar amps and stuff like that on it, you put it inside this, it cuts off everything. Nothing gets through. And I think that's important to use when you're using these things that feed off of radio signals.
Well, the argument I've heard against that, and I don't know either way, but is that some people believe that those radio signals are a necessary part of this communication process, or whatever you want to call it, the phenomenon or whatever it is. So by cutting it off, you're basically preventing it from happening at all.
And then the problem is that negates testing, that nullifies it, because you simply, it makes it untestable. And that's a problem.
Or at least it makes it untestable by our current means.
Right.
So, and again, I don't know if that is true or not. I'm not sure. I really wish I had a better knowledge of electrical engineering than I do, and physics in general.
Okay. All right, cool. Let's go to the next question. Still trying to find that picture.
Can't find it.
No.
Did you do the first question about the aura glasses?
Yeah. Yeah, I showed them off. Entity 7 Paranormal Joe says placing both digital recorders under the same conditions and only one recorder picks up an anomaly, then it could be considered an EVP. So I started this, say this because I wanted to comment on this.
Yeah.
And I disagree with this because if you're putting them digital recorders under the same conditions, depending on the placement and the orientation of the microphone, you might pick up a noise in a different direction than the other one. Especially like how far apart are they? Are they right next to each other, or are we talking across the room? There's differences there. So just based on this statement, I want to make that clear. Just based on this statement, I disagree with this. And even when you do have a noise that you're not sure what the source was, you can't call it an EVP if you don't know what the source is. If you don't have a source, you don't know what caused it. So it could be something natural, it could be something supernatural, but you don't know what caused it. Therefore, the best conclusion that I would say would be unknown.
But to be accurate, it could be considered an EVP.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I'm playing semantics with you, honestly, a little bit.
I mean, you can consider it like a unicorn fart if you want to, but I mean, it's not. It's unknown.
Yeah, that's fair.
You don't know what it's called.
UFO is the great term for this, right?
Yeah.
I look up at the sky every night and I see a UFO. Statistically, it's the ISS or a satellite. Or I had a great experience walking my dog, and for the 3 seconds I thought it was an alien invasion before I realized it was Starlink. Which was phenomenal, you know. But UFOs are great. It's a valid term, right? It's a flying object that's unidentified.
Yeah.
But we've come to term UFO synonymously with spaceship.
And we can, if I want to nitpick a little bit more, if it's not a voice, then it wouldn't be an EVP.
Correct. Would that be like an EAP then? Electronic audible phenomenon?
Something like that.
Let's start a new term.
There's too many acronyms already.
We really need one for the gastrointestinal phenomena that play every single session.
Oh my goodness. Because that all the time. I mean, all the time.
There's at least one. I'm on record on at least one session with an EVP where I can just be heard to say, "See a physician."
All right, let's get another question up here. How do you say that? I don't know how to pronounce that. Nicole? Is it Nicole? N-E-I? All right, Nicole. Here's a question. Why are all the apparitions dressed in period clothing when we see bell bottoms or hoodies?
I mean, coming from the land across the Atlantic, we have our historic ghosts there still. And I think there are accounts of, varying types of apparitions from various times. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's common, though, to say, or not only to say, but to hear, I saw a ghost in period dress. And this is something that I address often because I have a lot of questions when that statement comes up. But, I mean, she does have a point. I never heard a ghost described in bell bottoms or any other. I mean, well, no, that's not true.
The Toys R Us apparition from Sunnyvale was one.
I have issues with that photograph altogether.
Color me shocked, Kenny, that you would be skeptical.
I know, coming from me, but I hear period dress, which usually, not always, but usually refers to some kind of Victorian age.
Yeah.
And then I get the other modern age where a person is seen and they're mistaken for a living person.
Yeah.
There's no obvious reaction other than, oh, who's that? Let's go find out. We don't know. We can't find them. And then there's also the Civil War. For us in the U.S., I mean, there's a lot of Civil War ghosts. So there's Civil War dress. But outside of that, and I don't have any experience with UK versions. I don't know if there's anything other
Please
than.
tell me you didn't just say UK virgins.
Versions. Sorry,
Versions.
versions. It's my Philly
Versions.
accent coming out.
Gotcha.
Virgin.
Version.
Well, that took a turn.
And then we got some sacrifices going on.
You know what it kind of reminds me of, Kenny? Remember the whole thing of the UFO phenomenon where when we got the first reports, they always came from Venus or Mars.
Yes.
And then we sent probes there, and lo and behold, no way. Oh, but now they're coming from a little further out into the solar system. And we sent probes there, and now they're coming from Alpha Centauri, and it always seemed like the phenomenon was one step, like we would get to the, so there's a degree of that, it seems to me.
Alpha Centauri has been, that's become very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember when we were at a UFO conference, I remember overhearing a few, for lack of a better term, investigators conversing about how we, meaning planet Earth, were the redheaded stepchild of the universe.
Even you've got to find that credible.
Right.
That I'm totally on board with. I can totally see, aliens in their awesome spaceship passing by and locking the doors, rolling up the windows, saying, "No, we're not going there." Nope. They can't agree on anything. They fight about everything down there.
That's the bad neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. I would pass this by too. So I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah, the Galactic Chroma's guidebook just has one entry for us: avoid.
That's it. Just avoid, stay away from this sector. All right. Question. Richard, some of your investigations, you rent the place. Why have you not installed CCTV on all active places in a house and record for a week or a month continually? If you did, any findings?
Hi, Robert. Budget. So, number one, see, that much camera footage is, that many cameras would be expensive. Number two, you've got to find someone that's going to rent you a place for a month. I mean, a week probably would be doable, right? Anything longer? I don't think so. And then somebody's got to watch all that footage. Oh my God. And I used to be that way. Like, I actually started out Mr. Camera Guy. I would want to run cameras everywhere and camera everything. Waverly Hills cured me of that because I paid, I think my team and we paid like $1,200 to rent the place for 8 hours.
Wow.
And 2 hours into running cameras, I realized I hadn't experienced the place at all. I'd run a whole bunch of cameras and I ended up recording 100+ hours of empty hallways, when what I should have been doing was what I did last time I was there, was wandering the hallways, just soaking in what it feels like to be in this historic place.
Right.
And one of my big kind of road to Damascus moments in the field, when I stopped caring so much about evidence, honestly, was I realized, I'm in this place where thousands of people died. And I know that Shannon Byers is in the chat, and Shannon's one of the people that pointed out that the thousands of people was not the many tens of thousands of people that has been officially stated. It was massively overstated. Shannon did a great job in bringing that to light. Thousands of people died here. You had this place where men and women worked so hard with inadequate tools to try and save lives, and some of them paid with their own lives by getting tuberculosis. These walls can talk, and I don't mean that in any metaphysical sense necessarily, Kenny. I mean that if you walk those halls and you appreciate what those people went through, that's an evening well spent right there. Watching empty hallways on my camera feedback on the CCTV screen in the hopes that I'll catch a piece of evidence that everybody is going to shoot down anyway. What's the point? Because in this day and age, that magic piece of footage is either too grainy to be distinguishable, or it's too good to be true, in which case you faked it no matter what you say. Right? So why bother? So to me now, it's all about the experience. I think what I would love to do is what Harry Price did at Borley Rectory. For those that don't know, he got the place for a year and advertised for investigators to come and work a rotating watch, and moved in for a year and studied the place.
That's
that I would love to do. And when I retire and have the time and hopefully the budget, then I'll set up my own, for want of a better term, ghost lab. But even then, it will be less about tech.
This goes back to what you touched on earlier, is that spending 4, 5, 6 hours in a place doesn't determine what's going on. And you're right. Being able to rent a place for the time needed the time required to do something. And this is something that I've brought up on this show and my other show on Saturdays. The time and effort needed just to establish a simple baseline.
Mm-hmm.
You're already talking a year, easy, just for a baseline of all the environmental conditions that you're going to record.
Yeah, every season.
Yes, and then you can start your investigation. So the time involved for a, I hate saying true because there's so much involved with that term, but a good quality scientific investigation would take 2 years, probably minimum, in just to start. And yeah, the money that would be required to run a place, you'd have to find a place that has activity, alleged activity, and testable claims. You would have to rent the place for that long, and then have the equipment to set up and monitor, and like you said, to watch that or to listen to that over and over, and have controls in place. It's a massive undertaking and not something that hobbyists can do on a weekend.
Back in the days of the old VHS cameras, with the 3-hour tapes that you could do for 9 hours, I worked with a guy who used to bribe his kids to watch footage of empty hallways with candy. They would get like 1 candy bar per hour. And I almost reported him to Child Support Services. I'm like, this is abuse, man. You can't do this that's terrible. You can't have them watch this.
Yeah.
But also kind of the bigger issue, all humor aside, is that, I don't want to make this too heavy on your show, but in this day and age, you look at very well researched, very meticulously crafted, peer-reviewed scientific studies that half the public refuses to believe.
Yeah.
Who the hell are we going to convince with our, boilerplate studies at home? Why would I do this? I'm not gaining anything. And I don't mean financially. I mean, it's an exercise in frustration. So I would much rather kind of do this and tell the stories as I see them. Folks that like it, great. And folks that don't, I'm not your jam. But I'm too old and long in the tooth now to really want to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at a location only to be kind of dismissed.
I hear you. I'm not gonna counter that. I'm not gonna complain about it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's.
You'd have to do it just because you want to do it, and
that's why I do it.
Like not.
I mean, we do it. We do it for. I mean, I do it for a lot of reasons, but I do it because I'm passionate about it, and I'm going to keep going. But it is a constant uphill battle, and we're not talking a little hill. We're talking Mount St. Helens, Everest. This is huge hill that I'm constantly fighting over and over again, and it does get tiring. And I agree. Sometimes I just go to a place to enjoy it. I want to enjoy the environment. I want to enjoy the people that are there and just have fun and relax. And not always work, because, what's the end result?
Yeah, and I think from your point of view, you have a very definite message. And I think in many cases, I've seen you do a service. But I would pitch your work. I would posit that what you do, those that are willing to hear it and are willing to give you a fair hearing, that makes it worthwhile, right? There are many more you will never convince and probably shouldn't try.
Yeah. Pick your battles. That's good advice, and it's a good way to go about this. All right, let's move on, because I know we got a lot of questions now.
I'm having a blast with this too.
Good. Are you like, do you have to go anywhere? I mean, are you good with going over a little bit?
If you want to go over, let's go over.
Okay.
I'll be out.
All right. Well, we'll cut it off the questions and I'll take over. So we'll be good. All right, good. Bob has a question. Where do you stand on cryptids? Are there any that you believe might exist?
Oh, man. You know what? I have friends this week that are in Loch Ness, and I'm kind of jealous.
No.
Never been.
I want
there to be a Loch Ness monster so bad. I don't want to live in the world where there isn't one.
I'm sure there is a monster out there. We just haven't seen it yet.
I live in hope, right? Here in Colorado, there's a fairly big Squatch, Bigfoot, cryptid population, and it's not my wheelhouse. I find it fascinating to read about them. Have I seen any evidence that any of them exist? I mean, not that I would call evidence, but I find it fascinating to read about.
Yeah, I love going out. I've had the opportunity. We've had the opportunity to go out on some Bigfoot hunts, and I've gone out overnight in the woods, camped out with a bunch of Bigfoot hunters. I mean, it's exciting because I'm a city boy, so going out in the woods, I'm already on high alert. I'm like, I don't know what the hell's crawling around me, but it's fun. Do I believe they exist? I mean, Nessie, I'm with you. I have that hope because that's one of the few stories I grew up on and really fascinated me. So I'm always hopeful. I seriously doubt it, but I'm hopeful anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you. It would be a much colder, smaller universe if it was definitively proven there was no Nessie. But that lock is so big and deep, we'll never know for sure, and I like it that way.
All right, let's move on.
Did you answer this question?
What Aura glasses?
Oh, and how we answered that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we did cover that or a little bit earlier. Question, Richard, as I heard you complain in other interviews that you finding batteries always drain fast when used. Have you ever truly investigated why? Like,
hi, Robert. So, firstly, I rarely use the words always and never. So I have never said, ironically, I have never said, though, batteries always drain fast when used. I said that they sometimes will, and that tends to indicate things may be happening, right? I do not have the ability to go to my local store and ask them, how long have you had these on the shelves? You can check the manufacture date by all means, and I always have batteries that are within their date, but that's pretty much it. Okay. So I always use factory fresh batteries for this reason, but no, there's no way I could really check on this. So
that's an honest answer. I like that. I mean, I have trouble because I'm never there when they unpack. So I never see batteries taken out of the package.
Right.
So it's always, in my experience, it's always been the gadget comes out of the bag and it's turned on and it's used, and then sometime during the night it dies. And it's like, oh, I just put fresh batteries in this. And I always have that question. Did you?
Yeah.
You know,
just.
Yes. Like, what's just? Like last week? A month ago? What does that mean? So always a fun question.
I've seen it happen with cell phones several times, which interests me because that's a little bit more reliable. But you can also see a cell phone battery on its way out that starts giving just unreliable power indications. Right. So, you know, I find that suggestive, though. I do. If I'm losing multiple sets of batteries for no obvious reason in different types of devices, that interests me. And it seems to happen relatively frequently.
All right. Next question. What are your thoughts on exorcisms? Oh, shit.
Man, that's a loaded question, huh? Look at the way he sits there like a...
like, let's hear. I want to hear this.
My favorite amendment, Kenny, is the fifth.
Nice.
You know, I tell you, I've never been to one and I would love to. One book I would love to do. I'd like to do a book called... you should never tell people like what's on your hit list, right? I would love to do a book called In Search of Demons, where I genuinely take the stance of somebody who, with no skin in the game, would love to talk to so many people about why we believe in demons in the 21st century and attend an actual exorcism. I saw Josh Gates did it. I would love to do one. I really, really would. As a medical professional, there have been a number of times throughout history we know when people have been fatally exorcised, and that fills me with horror and dread. Exorcisms have murdered people. That's not up for debate. It has happened. Exorcisms have been conducted that are abusive, not just in the Catholic Church, by the way, but in other churches, other cultures around the world. Fatal exorcisms are a thing. I think that in order to believe they are effective, you would have to subscribe to the worldview of that particular faith. You'd have to believe in the entities that are being exorcised. I'm not saying I don't believe, by the way, in demons. I'm saying I do not see the world in that way, but I'm open to being convinced. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But I don't want to give a cop-out answer. I also don't want to take a dump on anybody's beliefs. So, I believe it's possible that there are non-human entities out there. It's possible that they're malevolent. I mean, a shark is pretty malevolent if it swims up to you, right? There's no malice involved, though. It's simply
it's Shark Week. I've been watching shows. I don't trust the motherfuckers anytime. No,
man,
never.
I wouldn't either.
They look like they're nice and they're just coming up and then they bite you. Nope.
Just like
Point being, though, that they're not these malicious things, right? They simply are apex predators.
They are demons in the sea.
I know a lot of people would say the same about snakes, spiders, and so forth. So my personal belief system, Bob, is not one that is compelled to believe in demons and exorcisms. But I'm open to being convinced. I'm open to attending and learning more. I have a couple of friends that are demonologists that they do see the world this way, and I've had very interesting debates and conversations with them.
Cool.
Yeah, I would love to do a book on it someday. Genuinely, if there's an exorcist out there that will give me permission to attend one with them, I would be up for it, as I'm sure Kenny would.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, cool. Next, what do we got here? John Guy. Define something weird is going on. Because something is weird sometimes, or because you think something weird equals paranormal. Yeah,
that's John reminding me quite clearly that I should have used more precise terms. So, John, what I meant by something weird is going on is that throughout human history, we have, I believe now, millions of accounts of people seeing apparitions, people experiencing supposedly paranormal phenomena that don't, if they are true, that seem to defy standard explanation. And what I mean by something weird going on is if every single one of those instances is in fact a mistake, it can be thrown out because of fraud, misinterpretation, 100 other reasons. Not one of them is paranormal. The fact that so many human beings have believed this over the years and continue to believe it today is a cultural phenomenon that is in and of itself weird. Does that make sense?
Good. Yes. That's good. I get that. And I like that you added the caveat, if they are true. That's very important because there's so many, in my experience, I've investigated so many mysteries that turn out not to be what was originally thought. And so it does happen. And my view is that we have to look at each case literally on a case-by-case method, because you can't just group everything together and say, look, there are millions of cases of people seeing ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
But if 999,000 of those cases turn out to be mistakes, then you don't have a million people seeing ghosts. You have very few.
You have one outlier.
Yes,
it still defies explanation.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be some cases where you just can't solve that mystery because there's not enough information.
I think you're right, and that's why I predict. And of course, Arthur C. Clarke said that prophecy is a dangerous business. But I heartily predict that because of those cases, this debate, guys like us will be having it hundreds of, if not 1,000 years from now.
Yeah.
Forever. That's the way it feels for me. Forever.
I feel bad for my wife sometimes because the shit that I put her through.
Oh, bless.
It's fun. We have fun. Melissa. Hey, Melissa. If you could be any mythical creature, who would you be and why?
Oh, Neil Patrick Harris, because of that dress sense.
Wow, that was okay. All right. What is he mythical?
Oh, the Neil Patrick Harris from the Harold and Kumar movies is mythical.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. That was good. Now I want a cheeseburger. That was good.
Like Castaway, yeah.
All right. Dana. Hey, Dana. Okay,
Castaway.
Kenny. Oh, how would one verify the authenticity of an EVP?
Go, Kenny. It's your birthday.
So with the vast majority of methods that I see used, you will not verify the authenticity of an EVP. Because in most cases, from what I've seen, it's a recorder left alone, or it is a segment where there's a lot of people there, you have a lot of voices, and there's no control over it. There is no control over the experiment per se, and I use that term loosely because it's not really an experiment. It is an attempt at an experiment. I'm not trying to be derogatory with that or insulting. It's just not a full-fledged experiment. But when people are recording or doing EVP sessions, they are looking for something. They are gathered in a room, and again, this is from my experience. They're gathered in a room. They are whispering. Even though there's that general rule of no whispering, people still whisper. You still get it. People's stomachs growl. They fart. They do all kinds of weird things. And sometimes it's tagged. Sometimes it's not. Friction from clothing, from moving on the floor, from moving in a chair, chairs creaking under the stress of the weight of the person sitting on it. All of these things can cause little noises that you might not pick up, but the recorder does. We have to remember that sometimes the recording range, the frequency range of these recorders is much wider than what we hear. But when they play back, it'll translate it into something that we can hear, that they can translate or transfer through the speaker. And then that plays and we can hear that. There's a lot involved with this. So I think when it comes to authenticating a EVP, I have a problem with the term authentication, or because in general, authenticating does not mean you verify that it's a ghost. Authenticating for a recording, like an audio recording, means that I hear this person's voice. I've heard it before. I have experience with this. I can verify that that is that person. Just like with a photograph. If a photograph is authenticated, it doesn't mean that there's a ghost in the photo. It means that this photo of Eastern State Penitentiary, the outside of it, I can authenticate that because I've been to Eastern State. I have other photos to verify this. I can say, yes, that is Eastern State Penitentiary. That's authentication. You can't authenticate a ghost because no one knows what a ghost is. Even though we have ideas, no one knows. There's nothing solid about that. So I don't know if that answered your question. I hope it did, but that's my best thing. Anything to add, Richard?
No, I think that's absolutely fair. Again, we keep coming back to where do we set our bar for evidence, right? The terms that we use, authentication, and so on. None of what we've ever done can objectively be verified. We're still arguing about ghost photographs today that were taken 60, 70 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. All right. What types of people to be read as professionals would you include on a ghost hunt if you could afford a large team to investigate? Oh, this is good.
My dream team?
Your dream team, Richard.
Sam Harris. I'm a big Sam Harris fan. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. Dr. Sam Harris.
Harris.
Yeah. He is a neuroscientist and a great educator. Kenny's looking them up as we're talking.
Yes, I am.
I would probably, I suspect you would enjoy Sam Harris's work. So definitely folks with a scientific bent like that. If we get to go like all across the board, oh, that's really interesting.
Go wherever you want.
Some absolute non-believers. Give me Ricky Gervais, who insists that this is all BS. I'd love to have him along to not only lighten the tone, but he's also a pretty insightful skeptic. If you watch Ricky Gervais debunk these kind of things. So a mixture of scientists and I think laymen and women, people like that. Now you've got my brain ticking over and thinking. Oh, Kenny, you throw me some bones here while I'm thinking.
So, I mean, I've touched on this question before because I think Bob has asked this multiple times of different guests. But like people that, and I'm not limiting myself to people that are alive.
Oh, okay.
I'm going throughout anytime.
Hello, Sir Oliver Lodge, Sir William Crooks. Okay.
Harry Houdini would be my first
Conan
choice.
Doyle, love you. You can stay home. Give us another Sherlock Holmes story. Less with the fairies.
Oh my God. Yeah, I love Sherlock Holmes. I love it. But
Mulder.
Oh my God.
Mulder? Wait, you got to bring Scully if you're bringing Mulder.
Yeah,
Oh my
bring
God.
the team.
And that gives us Kolchak as well.
Yeah.
By definition. Obi-Wan, he can feel that any disturbances in the
Oh my
Force.
God!
Right.
So not only
Because
is
like
there,
he'll be like, I said, it's a great disturbance in the Force, and Kenny's like, really though, define Force. Is it really a disturbance? Maybe you just have a headache. I mean, like I feel like you and Obi-Wan could have this back and forth.
oh my goodness, I'm distracted right now because Nicole wrote Sylvia Brown, and I seriously hope that's a joke.
Shots fired.
I seriously hope that's a joke because Sylvia Brown is one of my pet peeves. I'm very
too.
what?
Mine too,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Sylvia Brown.
All right, moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not get our blood pressure.
Amanda Bering. That's all I have to say.
Of a mind.
Yeah.
Of one mind.
All right. Aaron, what's your opinion when people use the term for word energy? Like they walk into a room and say it has a weird energy. I know it's a trigger word for the show. I'm just curious how the term is perceived in different cultures.
I think we've reached a point where the word is almost meaningless. This device measures energy. Does it? Explain. Well, it does. And then I've heard that how many times. So it's almost meaningless. Oh, I sense your energy. Your energy's off, so on and so forth. I think the word has been used so much, it almost no longer has any meaning.
I agree.
Yes. We did a show on Three Tortured Souls a while back about energy. We actually went into the different types of energy and the explanations, definitions, and went through it because it is, as you said, it's a term that it has no meaning anymore in the paranormal community. It is a filler.
Yeah, black box.
That's it. Yeah, it just fills in because when someone is trying to explain something and they don't know how to explain it, the word energy usually comes into play. It really does, without knowing what it means. So,
that reminds me. So, I will add to my dream team, Dr. Brian Cox, who when talking about ghosts, which usually when he's asked about the Super Hadron Collider, he talks about ghosts in short order afterwards, and he maintains that we would have detected this paranormal energy by now if it was there to detect. Which I kind of think that, and I'm a big fan of his, but I kind of think that's dangerous thinking. That the universe has a few more curveballs to throw the physicists, let alone the rest of us yet, before we understand all of its properties. So I get why he finds the paranormal line of questioning so annoying, but I also do wish he'd be a little more open-minded on the subject too.
Yeah, I agree. I can understand how it gets annoying because, like, when quantum entanglement came up and it really hit the news feeds and it really became big, immediately I saw a lot of ghost hunters / paranormal investigators using that and saying, "Look, quantum entanglement explains ghosts." No,
before that it was wormholes.
Yes, and these new things that come up, new explanations that come up, new terms come up, it's immediately adapted to the belief system. Mm-hmm. And that I don't know how, I don't know what's going on other than, hey, something new in science, how can I spin this to support my beliefs? Mm-hmm. Without understanding what that term is. And that's what really gets me. So I see quantum entanglement. I kind of understand a little bit about it. And no lie, I mean, I'm not a physicist. I have no idea what's going on in physics. I try, but I understand that it's not what, and I'm going to use the term ghost hunters. When I use that term, I'm using it as more of a general term. It's not, but when ghost hunters use it, they're using it as a bold explanation for something they don't understand. Mm-hmm. And it kind of pisses me off. But
again, we live in a day and age when many people believe that their opinion is every bit as good as a physicist's.
Right.
And it is when it comes down to who do I vote for or what car do I buy or whatever. It's not when it comes down to physics.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's the world we've created. So,
yeah, thanks to social media. All right. Nicole, what is your thoughts about residual hauntings?
Oh, I'd rather like one if there's one going. Sure. I mean, by residual, I'm given to understand we're talking about something that's a kind of natural recording, in which the events of a past age replay over and over, kind of like an echo in eternity. I love the idea of it. I don't find it implausible. I know that the literature of the paranormal going back through the SPR and beyond has a number of cases that meet this description. Mm-hmm. So I know that it's a buzz term to say things like stone tape theory and so on and so forth, something which is, of course, completely unproven. But I find it possible. Again, something needs looking at. Maybe nature has a way of recording and replaying things that we're not familiar with yet.
I will say the Stone Tape was a good movie.
Nigel Neal, 1970, yes.
I enjoyed it. Definitely enjoyed it. But yes, I residual haunting is kind of that was like a tribal knowledge thing. As I got into ghost hunting, I heard the term, I understood what the definition was supposed to be, but I've never seen an example of it like that. I see a residual haunting as the perfect experiment. That is a testable claim because it's something that happens over and over and over again. So we should be able to test that.
Well, the ultimate example surely is the anniversary haunting.
Yes.
Which I've always wondered about that too. Like the spirit is said to appear at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve, which was a story from my own home. And I'm always thinking, what about leap years?
Right.
Is this Eastern time? What's going on?
Right.
I've always wondered. I mean, it's fascinating, right? And so much of it is, of course, folklore. But you're right. That should be testable. I've yet to hear of a case of an anniversary haunting where a team of investigators went, staked the place out, and were waiting with their cameras just ready to go and were able to capture some things. Right. If anyone knows of a case, I'd love to hear about it.
Awesome. Cool. What else we got? We got question. Richard, can we hear your investigations on people close to death seeing and conversing with the beyond and your interpretation of this phenomenon?
Yeah, I have a personal relation to this because my mom, when she was dying of terminal cancer, hospice workers told me that she was having conversations with dead relatives, which is not actually all that uncommon. So there are two schools of thought that I'm aware of. One is that this is the dying brain essentially trying to make us feel better and ease us towards death. We're undergoing a traumatic experience. The brain is trying to make us comfortable by conjuring up memories, images, dreams, lucid dreams, call them what you will, of things that will make it less painful for us to undergo that passage. The other possibility is that there is indeed some paranormal event going on where dead relatives come to help us cross over. I've talked to a lot of palliative care nurses in my career as a paramedic. Many, many, many of them have stories like this. And the more fascinating ones to me are cases in which somebody who was very, very cognitively impaired, someone with severe dementia that was in an almost vegetative state, for a brief moment or two, suddenly they become lucid, have this conversation, or they see something and talk about it literally, and then they die. I find that fascinating. Is it paranormal? Here's the dangerous thing. I like to think so. And that's why I'm guarded on the subject. I really like to think that one of my deceased family members came from my mom and helped her across into whatever comes next, if there is indeed something that comes next. And because I'd like to believe it, I'm wary of believing it.
Right.
I think in that case, and this is something that I've touched on before, when you have that personal belief that you cherish for yourself, like you just said, I'd like to believe that this is what happened when your mother passed. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing for me. Like, I get asked constantly about those situations, and it's like, what would you do? What would you say? I have nothing to say. Why would I say anything? You're good. everything is happening. It doesn't matter what I say. There's nothing for me to say. There's nothing to add to it because it's comforting to the situation. So why should I say anything? There's no reason to. I mean, I have my personal beliefs. I don't share them. With pretty much anyone, but I do have my own beliefs, and whether they're true or not doesn't matter.
And the good point is, Kenny, we'll all find out one day.
Right.
Yes.
This is a question that will be settled.
Yes.
And we'll know that if hopefully many years from now, Kenny, if your last word is, "Oh, God damn it,
fuck," you were right.
Yeah, that's what he's gonna say.
It's gonna
Donna, you were right.
Donna.
Now, Donna, if Kenny predeceases you, I will be very disappointed if you don't get his phone, and about 2 hours after his funeral, start texting everybody in his contact list saying, "Look, they were right. I was wrong. It's really hot down here." Turns out me and Dawkins are having a drink.
Damn.
Oh, that would be funny. We have to discuss this.
That would.
We have to discuss.
See
For the record, by the way, I'm a fan of Mr. Dawkins' work, and I have all his books.
I see how easy. Like, I can spend decades building up a reputation, and you can easily unravel it.
Yes. One
So
text.
be nice to her.
You better be nice.
Or eat
try.
healthy. Start working out, man.
I gotta outlast her.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
I actually can see those headlines. Toasty down here says dead skeptic.
Oh my God, dude. It's so, like, on a related note, when James Randi passed away, I remember seeing Uri Geller. The first thing he would say, "Oh, I contacted him. And I've talked to him. He's okay in the afterlife." I'm like, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like that. No. All right. Moving on.
These individuals that contact dead celebrities as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. She is the divine one. Yes, she is. And $1 million.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any? We still have questions? We do? Yes. If Bigfoot was found, but the one that was the proof of existence had small feet, would you be disappointed?
Maybe Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Next question.
So that is actually called an albatwitch. So we have out here in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster County, there's
Columbia.
an albatwitch, or Columbia. Yeah, Columbia, Pennsylvania. There is a albatwitch festival. And the festival is based on a small version of a Bigfoot. And according to the legend, and I believe, don't quote me on this because I'm not up to date on the legend, but I believe in the 1800s, people would have picnics out in the local park. And it was it's a cool park. There was a very large rock formation that overlooks a river. But they would go and have picnics out there, and these ape-like creatures that were described, the description are like small Bigfoots, would climb through the trees and either eat the apples that they would find or take the cores and throw them at the picnickers. And there is a festival that has developed around it, and we've been out there a couple times for it. So, and I constantly call them Little Feet because they're described as little Bigfoot. So interesting. If you're ever in Pennsylvania, around that time, let me know. We'll hang out and we'll go check it out.
Albatwitching.
I love that. All right. Last question. Shannon. Hey, Shannon. Good friend of mine. Richard, investigators tend to go places with historical, multiple tragic deaths. What do you think of people that would want to investigate modern day tragic multiple deaths? Ooh,
yeah, I think that it's immensely tactless in order to do that. I mean, having been involved with a couple of mass casualty incidents myself in a professional capacity, the closest I've ever come to it personally, the one book that I really debated even writing was the book about Fox Hollow Farm, which was the home of a serial killer who was active during the 1990s. The main reason that I ended up wanting to write that book was that nobody had heard of the victims that he had abandoned in the woods behind his home. Many of them were not even named, and I wanted to bring some light to that. But these days, you see people that are far too willing to try and jump onto the bandwagon of, we're going to go talk to this murder victim. We're going to go to this place of tragedy. Last year, I did what I called the Great American Ghost Trip. I was a kid that grew up on American movies like Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run, and I wanted to go cross country, and I wanted to stay at like a haunted location every night. So I went from Colorado to Pennsylvania and back in the space of 12 days. I drove 3,800 and something miles.
Damn.
Just because I know you like your facts, Kenny, there is a slight exaggeration on the book cover. It says 4,000 miles. It was 389 something. And along the way, I stopped at Shanksville, the Flight 93 Memorial.
Yeah.
Now,
we've been there.
I'm writing a ghost book, and I did indeed write about this visit in the book. I did not and would not take a voice recorder or do anything paranormal related there, because it would have felt like desecration. It would have felt so disrespectful. I actually wanted to go to pay my respects to the victims, and just experience that location as a citizen, as a human being. You know, you can go to these places by all means. Go with some compassion and go with some respect, and leave the equipment at home. And if there are ghosts there, you have no business poking around them while the bodies are still warm.
That was actually like a hard place to visit, because we went there, and when you go through the visitor center, you can pick up phones, like old time phones.
Yes.
For you kids out there, they don't know what they are. Units that are corded, so they're connected by a cord. But you pick them up and you hear the phone records, the phone recordings, the last conversations people on that flight had with their loved ones. And I mean, I teared up. I was crying in the aisle, because
I left angry. I left so enraged.
Yeah.
Which was not the point, but I also, with some time to calm down and appreciate it, the phone calls, you know, so much love, so much.
Yeah.
You have an act of barbarity and hatred and evil. I mean, let's call it what it was.
Right.
But you also have so much good that stemmed from it in terms of the human responders, the courage of those on the plane.
Right.
I'll never hear the words "let's roll" again.
Right.
Not tear up ever.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that is a difficult place to visit. And if it wasn't, they did it wrong. They would have made the memorial wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
but the idea of staking one out, looking for ghosts, repulses me. Right.
And I mean, they're I don't know if this is in particular person that we know, that we've probably heard of, that we won't name, that goes around as soon as a celebrity dies, they're right on to it. It's I find it disrespectful, and I don't encourage it at all.
No, right.
Yeah, let it be. All right, that was the last question?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. We are
great questions tonight.
Awesome. So, where can we find more of you? I did put your website in the chat room, but you got anything coming up? Any events or anything?
Thank you. You can find more of me every day that passes, unfortunately. But enough about my personal problems. Sam Winchester or Dean Winchester. I have friends, the majority of whom are female, that would attack me depending on which answer I didn't give. This is the only one I'm too scared to answer tonight.
Okay.
So I remember this question came up before, and I actually reacted too quickly, because I reacted and said the wrong one for me. So I am Dean Winchester, Dean all the way. But as soon as I was asked that question, it came up. I got into character and I was like, Sammy, because Dean's always going, Sam, like every show. And then I was like berated, like, what are you talking about? No, you're Dean. I'm totally Dean. Team Dean.
Well, the right answer is this. I'm going to go to the Winchester, have a pint, and wait for this all to blow over.
Yeah.
That was good. That was really good. I like that reference.
I like Blue Moon too.
Yeah, Blue Moon's good.
Mm.
All right, so you got that. If you can stick around for a couple minutes, I'm going to do my announcements, and I do want to talk to you a little bit after the show. So
Yeah, I'm fine.
definitely go. I have a personal question I want to ask you,
You
but
bet.
all right. So let me put my announcements. Let me find my announcements. So let's see. Here we go. Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern. I do 3 Tortured Souls podcast or live stream. I don't know what they call it anymore because it's a video show. It's like this. I don't know. It's a live stream we do. So I do it tomorrow, and Dave will not be with us. He's on vacation, so we're going to have John Kennedy sitting in. So we're still going to have 3 Tortured Souls, and we're going to be talking about do-it-yourself testing tools for paranormal claims. And I have a few that I'm going to show off as soon as I get here. But I want everyone to know we're going to be doing it at 9 o'clock instead of 8 because I do have a conference tomorrow, and it ends at 6, and it's an hour and a half away. So we can't do it at 8. We'll do it at 9. We'll be here. With that, let's see. July, the Skeptical conference I did, it was last weekend. It was great. If you missed it, you can still sign up and register and see all the lectures. I had a great time. July 23rd, which is tomorrow, is the Para-Unity. I'll be set up with my Skeptical Help booth and a lot of information. Divine Donna will be set up with her Lucky Tiki Creations booth, selling all kinds of awesome crafts. And I hear there's going to be some creepy-ass looking dolls for sale that someone made. So make sure you come out and buy them because I don't want to bring them home. So the more you buy, the less I have to carry. So help me out. August 19th to 21st, I will be in Gettysburg for the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. Are you going to be there?
You know, this is the first one I'm going to miss in a few years, unfortunately. Love that event, though, and I wish you all the very best, everyone that goes.
Okay. So I'll be out there. Donna will be out there. And actually, this is going to be a special one because Tim Vickers and Dave Schumacher from the 3 Tortured Souls, the 3 of us will be out there, and it's our 100th show. So we'll be live streaming live from the show. We'll be doing it pretty much all day. So if you're there, come by the booth. You can sit in on the show. You can say hi. You can talk to us for a while. You can do whatever. We're pretty much open. And then the last thing I have is October 20th to 23rd is Las Vegas, Nevada. It's SciCon, which is the huge science conference. And this year I'll be speaking on the big stage. Usually I do the workshops, but I'll be speaking on the big stage Friday night, talking about skeptics and believers, some skeptics and believers, how to work together, how to come together and work together and for a common goal and get along. So come on out to that. It's going to be a good time. And with that, I think we're done. So let me turn these off and say, Richard, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I had a blast. This was a great conversation. I love this kind of conversation where we can talk. I think we agreed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think we agreed a lot more than we disagreed.
Sure.
But
I've always believed that you can disagree without being disagreeable too, and that's really what it comes down to.
That's a great. I love that. That's great. We get along so great. I want to talk Star Wars with you now.
Yeah, I will take all night.
Yeah. All right. So let me play our outro video and get on with
guys.
it.
We'll see
Thanks,
ya.
guys. Awesome.
Oh,
awesome
there's
show.
no show next week.
There's
right?
no show next week. Yes,
No
I have
Friday
to say that.
night
I'm
show.
sorry because I will be out of town. I'm actually leaving Monday for a super secret thing, and I'm not coming back until sometime Friday night, maybe Saturday morning. So no show next week, but there will be a 3 Tortured Souls on Saturday. Don't worry about that. And enjoy the weekend, and remember, never stop learning. And I'll see you later. Bye.
Mm.